Do you have an outreach failure story? You know, where you put on an event at your church and either nobody came or that the people who came did not come back. I was putting on a system training event, and one of the pastors there was sharing how at Easter time, his church, which ran about 35 people, had put on this great event and over 200 people came. But the next Sunday, not one person came back. And I looked at him and I said, I can tell you why that happened. And he said, well, what? And I said, well, your people don't know any lost people. So when you were planning the event, they began to ask their Christian friends who go to other churches to come to your event, and they came. But these people aren't looking for a new church, and so the Sunday after your event, they were back in their home church. That really crushed him. He was really upset about this because he had put so much effort into it, and it just felt wrong that nobody was reached through the event. I want to tell you that when this kind of thing happens, you have to look to your evangelizing system, because outreach events are essentially a whole church strategy. It's one part of the evangelizing system. But before you can really implement a whole church strategy, there's things that need to happen before that is put into motion, because people just don't show up because you put on an event. If you want to have success in your evangelizing system and be effective, then you have to train your congregation to engage. You see, we kind of assume that everybody knows how to do stuff. But the fact of the matter is that if we're going to train people, we have to train them on how to see lost people, unchurched people, and to become friends with them. And this is often left out of evangelism training. We teach people verses they need to share. We teach them how to order their presentation so they do it right. We train them how to say the right words and to lead people with the right questions. But we never teach them, who is it that you want to engage with? Who do you know that's lost? Who do you know that you need to be praying for and building relationships with? And when that does not happen first, no outreach whole church strategy really is effective. If you're going to train people to know and build relationships with lost, the other thing that you have to add to your evangelizing system is accountability. Accountability is a word that means we make this important. It's so important that we want to be checking up to make sure it's happening. And in a lot of churches where they've had evangelizing training, they have no idea if people are actually engaging. They kind of hope people are engaging, but then they don't see anybody bringing anybody to church, inviting them to outreach events. They don't see anybody crossing the line of faith. And so you want to figure out how to keep people accountable. Do this by engaging in relational conversation. Quite often this can be done in small group settings, or it can be you reminding them from the platform on a regular basis that this is the vision strategy, that they should be praying for lost people, building relationships with lost people because there is an outreach event coming, or maybe that they need to be inviting them to your church service to get under the hearing of the scriptures, of the word, of the gospel. I have a friend that I went to school with years ago that uses this strategy totally in his congregation. Their whole church strategy is to have their congregation bring lost people to their Sunday morning services so they can hear the gospel. And so in order to do that, they taught them how to make friends with lost people. And every year, this church sees 15 conversions for every 100 attenders that go there. Think about that. They've been doing this for a lot of years, but just think that if your church had 100 people in it that God used to reach 15 people with the gospel and see them cross the line of faith. Just think that if you have a church of 200 where you'd see 30 people cross the line of faith next year, your church would be transformed. And like I said, this is a system issue. So if you're going to have outreach events, if you're going to have a whole church strategy that's going to work for you, You want to make sure that you prepare your people to engage with others who don't know Jesus before you even try to have that event.